Hi, my name is Ray Lamb. The purpose of this video is basically to introduce the student to the different parts of a bicycle. We call it the anatomy of a bike. Basically, I think if you're going to ride a bike, it's important that you understand how to at least identify the different parts of the bicycle and have a little understanding of how they work together to form a unit that kind of can move us from point A to point B. It's cycling 101, so we're going to try to keep it pretty basic, but I want you to be able to identify these parts, so here we go. First and foremost, the main component of the bicycle is the frame. The frame is what ties all the other components together. And this bicycle is pretty easy to spot because it's all white, trimmed in blue with some black writing. The parts of the frame are pretty simple. The top tube, that's the long tube here. We have the down tube. We have the seat tube. That forms the front triangle of the frame, you might say. The back triangle here is formed by what we call the seat stay, the chain stay, and again, that seat tube. A lot of people think that this white portion here is also part of the frame, but it's not. Okay, it's not. It's connected to the frame, but it's not a whole part of the frame. It's called the front fork. So the basic part of the bicycle is the frame: top tube, seat tube, down tube, seat stay, chain stay. Front fork, and the fork is connected to the front wheel. Okay, and then the chain stay and the seat stay, where they come together, that's connected to the back wheel. When we're talking about a wheel and tire, I know it seems pretty simple, but let's go ahead and identify the parts there. What you basically have is a wheel that's connected to a hub with these long skinny things called spokes. On the outside of that wheel is a rubber area, which we call the tire. Inside that tire, sometimes there's a tube. Sometimes there's not a tube. Some tires are tubeless. Okay, we get air into that tube or into that tire by way of what we call a valve stem. Okay, sometimes these valve stems are called Presta valves. Sometimes they're called Schrader valves. But the main focus, the main purpose of this stem is to allow us to get air into that tire. Okay, when I said these spokes are connected to a hub basically is just a round unit that has a couple of bearings in it with an axle running through it so the wheel can spin around that axle and roll freely. Okay? If you look at the back here, the mechanism that actually makes the bike go is what we call the drive gear here, and it consists of, in the front we have what we call a crankset. A crankset basically is two chain rings, sometimes three, with two crank arms on either side, and then pedals connected to the crank arm. Okay, the back of the drive gear is basically a cassette. It has several different size cogs on the cassette itself. These two units are connected to each other in what we call a chain. Okay, so the way we change gears is we simply move the chain amongst the chain rings in the front and over the different cogs in the back. Now, we don't want to physically get off our bike and be moving the chain, so we have a way that we can deal with that. We have a mechanical device that moves the chain for us. We have what we call a front derailleur and a rear derailleur. As the front derailleur is moved in or out, it makes the chain change from one chain ring to another. It does the same thing with the cogs in the back when the rear derailleur is moved in or out. Now, the way we move those derailleurs is with those two levers to the front of the bike. Again, this is the handlebars, and the levers I'm talking about are this lever and the one on the opposite side. The one on the left moves the derailleur in the front. The one on the right moves the derailleur in the back. And that's how we move the chain from one chain ring and one cog to another, causing us to be able to make the bike easier to pedal or harder to pedal, depending on the terrain that we're trying to cover. All right. Also, once we get the bike moving, we have to get the bike to come to a stop. So we have what we call a caliper here, a caliper in front that has two pads in it. And as the calipers are compressed, the pads push against the wheel, which stop our bicycle. The way we control these brakes is, again, through these same handles on this particular bike. They're different on some bikes. But on this bike, controlled through the same shifters that we're moving the derailleurs with. Instead of pushing in and out to move the derailleur, we'll actually pull towards us to activate the caliper. Now, again, the one on the left goes to the front wheel. The one on the right goes to the back wheel. Okay? So it's important that you know that. The saddle, which we sit on, is connected to the frame with what we call a seat post. The handlebars, which we use to hold on and sometimes to steer a bit with, is connected to the frame with what we call a headset. Okay? And then the wheel in the front, again, is connected to the frame with what we call a fork. So those are the basic parts of the bicycle that I want you to be able to identify. And little parts like having the cages mounted to the frame so you can put the water bottles in, and the seat bags so you can keep a tube and a tire tool and some air. Those kind of things are important, but I want you to understand the main portion of the bike. And that being the frame, make sure you understand top tube, down tube, seat stay, chainstay. The wheels and tires, crankset, and the cassette on the back, the two derailleurs, the shifters on the top that change the derailleurs and operate the brakes, brake calipers, cables, headset. If you got that, you pretty much got the anatomy of a bike. I think you'll be in pretty good shape.